What's up, guys? My name's Marcos Garcia, and today you're on Conversations with One Percenters podcast. We have Justin Boyum. Appreciate you for tuning in and hopefully sharing some valuable insights and stories with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marcos, thanks for having me. It's an honor. I know this is kind of a platform that everybody's got access to, but it's yours, and I feel honored for having me on here because I know you're out there helping people do some amazing things with, advertising and marketing, and so I think it's just an honor to be here.
Yes, sir. Same here. So we have a new ritual for the way this podcast rolls. How it works is you get to ask the first question for our next guest. I have your question ready to go, but think of a question you would like to ask the next guest without knowing who it is, what they do. What question would you ask them?
What question would I ask them? What is the number one thing you wish you knew 10 years ago?
The number one thing you wish you knew 10 years ago. That's a very good question. All right. So our question for you today, can you share a difficult moment in your business that you rarely might talk about? Like you might not talk about this, but it was like a struggle, but it taught you a very, very valuable lesson.
Yes, 100% can tell that story. A few years ago, it's related to what I'm doing now, but it was a different business. We were running I had a partnership business for a career coaching offer where they were helping people get jobs and do it and from a values perspective, make more money, things like that. And we realized that the way that the marketing was set up with that was through an outdated tool that ran through LinkedIn as a platform. Basically, it was like free leads, effectively, is what it really turned out to. So think of it in terms of like, if you've heard of like a Home Advisor, which is for like service-based businesses, where you buy into it, and then when someone raises their hand for your type of service, they send you the lead and you reach out to them. It was like that, except we weren't having to pay for it. And It worked really well for a while. Like it did really, really well. And in the back of my mind, I was always concerned, like, well, what if this stops working? Right? What if this doesn't stay working? And I was like, well, but we're doing okay. And we were really focused on delivering for the people who were coming through that and optimizing kind of the sales process after that marketing stage. And then sure enough, like at a certain point, like it really dried up and we were waited too long to start to do something about that. And the reason for it was it was not a consistent, what I would call cold market strategy. I think to have a business, and this is in the marketing space yourself, like you have to have a good cold marketing strategy, meaning people who don't know you, how do you get in front of them and turn them into leads for your business?
Yes.
And this was more of like a hybrid cold warm strategy where they were raising their hand, but they weren't specifically raising their hand to us. And so we were having to compete. And then whenever, for whatever reason, I don't know, algorithms or they shut it down or whatever they did, it stopped working. It caused a lot of pain and it took us some scrambling to try to figure out, okay, how can we get that faucet turned back on? And so what it taught me was knowing that you have to have a strategy to get in front of your ideal prospects that you can have control over. In some way, shape, or form. For some of us, many times it's like, hey, we still have to learn the organic side. Some of us, you're ready to start moving into the paid marketing strategy, or maybe you're using a borrowed traffic strategy, but you have to have a strategy that consistently gets you in front of new people every day.
And so was it because you relied on one specific strategy? Is that what you're saying?
It was the main strategy that we were doing. We were not doing any outbound marketing, right? It was all basically this inbound process. And it was working. So we're like, well, whatever, you're making money at it. It's fine. And there's enough to go around. And then when that dried up, it's like, okay, well, now we can't turn on the lever to go make a small pivot to just make something easy. We had to learn how the outbound marketing systems would work for that business. Right. So it really caused a lot of pain of like, oh, suddenly we went from, 50K months to like 5. Right. And we've got mouths to feed and team and stuff like that. And so it was some pain to try to learn that with that particular offer, how to get it in front of the right market. Right. So it was good, and it was fun and it worked out okay, but it was also a very painful lesson to learn that. And it was like taking place like during the holidays too. So it was even more painful.
So like for another analogy for those out there who might not be in business, it's for instance the same as like having a TikTok and all your money is coming from TikTok, and then the US government wants to ban it, and then now you're without money.
Right. Yeah, it was like that. We were depending on one traffic source that we didn't own, and that caused problems for us. So that was a painful lesson to learn, especially as somebody who now I look at like monetizing that kind of thing, and we can get more into the details of that. But looking back on it, it's a little bit of an embarrassing thing that we let happen.
No, interesting, because like sometimes, like, because I even one of my mentors says that you should have multiple, like at least two ways of like not necessarily generating income, but like strategies. Like you don't want to just rely on one, because then you're like, I know a lot of people say put all your eggs in one basket. You might have heard that too, but sometimes that might not always be the case.
It certainly depends on what you're trying to do. I think that there's not necessarily a problem having like a one singular attraction method. It's always helpful to have multiple ways to bring that in. I think that probably two or three is probably the optimal for most businesses. But early on, when you're say less than 30K a month, you can certainly have one attraction method. Just make sure
Okay.
it's something where you get a hold of it, right? Because ultimately, it's about
Yeah.
building that list that you have control over it, so that you can always pivot to another style if you needed to. But yeah,
As
100%.
you scale up, so you're saying
Mhm.
as you scale up, you need to have multiple in the
Yeah, as you scale
beginning.
up, I'd say the beginning one is
Okay.
fine.
Nice.
Right. And it's kind of like a focus thing, especially if you're new. You don't want to be trying to learn like, let's just use platforms like TikTok, right? Learning how to do TikTok, and then how does it work on LinkedIn, and then how does it work on Facebook, and like trying to do all of them at once is all. It seems like that would be efficient to do, because you think that they operate the same. They really don't. And so you just go with the one that works, right? So for that particular example, right, LinkedIn is where those people are. So that if I was going to maximize that time, it's learning how do you cold market to LinkedIn as a platform, right? That would be the best strategy for that particular offer. If your people are on TikTok, that's fine. If that's where it's easier for you, if that's something you're
Yep.
familiar with, it's Facebook, there's Instagram, it doesn't matter. There's people everywhere. All these platforms are growing and have your people on them. It's just pick one, learn it, and get good at it where it's consistent. And then when it is producing for you at a consistent level, then reinvest some of that revenue that you're generating into setting up new streams, right? And that's
Yeah.
how the game is played.
And I believe you're right, because like right now I'm just doing YouTube, but if I was to add TikTok strategy and I was to start adding like Facebook
I don't have I
strategy,
forget to say YouTube. Yeah, YouTube is another major player.
yeah,
Right.
then I'm like, okay, well I got to figure out how Facebook works, or I got to figure out how TikTok works versus just staying with one strategy, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
No, that's a
I think all of us have a tendency, we want to be like the big giant gurus who are omnipresent everywhere. And they
yes,
have the reason that they can do that is because they have the capital to spend money on teams that run all that stuff for them. So don't try to be, a top 1% guru, right? Just be the person that you can be for your people, right? And if your people
mm.
are on one particular platform that they're there, get good at that one. And then when you're good at it, add the other one.
And so when you add the other one, are you delegating the first one that you did before
Not
you add it?
necessarily. It
No.
depends, right? It
Okay.
depends on how you're doing it, right? If you can manage it, it's like anything, right? When I'm working out, right? Like the first time you try to work out, if you haven't done it in a long time, and let's say you have a goal, you want to like increase your upper body strength. Well, the first time you do all of those workouts, it might take you a little bit longer. It's going to hurt a little bit more, and you got to get your muscles trained to be going through those things. But once you
Okay.
know it, then you can go do those workouts without having to look at a checklist. You know what to do, you know the form and the technique, and it's easier for you to do that. And then you can add a little bit more resistance here and there, and that's fine. And then it's easier to like, okay, well, now let me do a different muscle group that I'm learning how to approach. It's the same thing here. Once you've got a system working, if it's something that you can manage very easily, and then you can add the second part of it, that's totally fine. But also, I'm a big fan in like not being the person who does everything. Right. So I want you to be good at what you do. Let's say you teach, like if you're like yourself, Marcos, where you teach marketing, or if you're somebody who helps people with sales, or you're like maybe in like the performance, like you're there to do that thing.
Yep.
You're not necessarily there to like run the like every little detail of the business, maybe at first, but eventually you should be having teams that are doing some of those things for you. But you have to know enough to be able to call BS or notice when something needs to be changed. Right. So that's where, hey, start with one. It's easy. You can run a 50K, 100K a month business with just one platform or one traction method. Um, then you have the capital to invest in having an ads manager or something like that you can do other things, like go get a YouTube expert to help you build that, right? Or offload the other one, and so you can learn the new one, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that sounds honestly, that sounds about right. What I'm curious, Justin, how did you even get started in business? Sounds like you know a lot already. Like I'm listening to you. How did you get started? What was that like moment where you're like, I'm not sure if you did this all your life or like there was a moment in your life you're like, fuck a job, I'm going to a business. Excuse me for my
Yeah.
language, but like,
Well, you're not going to offend me. I'm former United States military anyway, and that's kind of where it really started. I wasn't like a 20-year career, Army veteran, but I did spend some time on active duty, transitioned into corporate America, bounced around for a few years because I just never was quite very fully satisfied with anything. I mean, I got great opportunities, and I don't look back with any ill will. But something was just wrong and missing. And I was like, I got to go figure something out. And so I decided to invest some time and some money in going into like self-development experience, right? A multi-day experience, and started looking around and seeing people and how they were experiencing transformation. And I was like, oh man, like this is all stuff I learned in my leadership training, right, from the military.
yep,
And I'm seeing people get massive results just in the room and seeing them transform themselves, just at least making those decisions. Like, I could do that. I didn't know you could make money doing that thing this way. This was back in like 2017. And so I just said, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to leave corporate America. And I did within a few months. I just launched my own businesses, and the rest is kind of rock and roll history. But I would say that the flashpoint really for me was understanding what we just talked about, like how hard it can be to build it. Like, it's all fun and games. We have a passion of things that we want to do, but then you have to
very,
learn that you have the whole running the business aspect of it, of
very hard.
marketing and sales. And I just wanted to coach people. Right. And so I went through the same pain. I don't think I'm saying anything that's unique to necessarily everybody out there. I know there's some overnight successes. And for those of you who achieved that, we all hate you. Or I'm kidding, of course. But
Dan Henry,
most of the
no, I'm just
time,
kidding.
maybe you get a little bit of success, but then it dries up, and you have these challenges similar to kind of my story that I was admitting to earlier. And I just wanted to have simplicity, right? I didn't want to have, a channel here and a channel there. And then I had to have like an ecosystem of email nurturing sequences that takes 7 months, and then hop on strategy calls only to get told, let me think about it, and all these things. And it was just a constant battle to get new clients, where it was becoming hard to serve the people that were my clients, right? Because I was always focused on those things. I was like, well, I could just continually grind, or I could find a way that's a little bit more simpler. And that's where I discovered back, and it was really born out of in 2020 when we all got hit with that massive thing called COVID. I don't know if it happened where you are. I think
Everywhere.
lots of people are kind of referencing this point, but I used to get all of my clients from face-to-face meetings.
Mm.
Right. I didn't really market on the internet before 2020, not very well anyway. I used to just go places and just tell people what it was about, and someone would raise their hand and we'd have a conversation, and good number of the times they would end up becoming a client. But I had to have the ecosystems of following up and doing all the things. And then I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't go like network with anybody. I couldn't physically go do it. It was all online or digital. And I was forced to go digital at that point, as many of us were. And, but I don't know about you, but like digital networking is not as potent as in-person networking is. Does that make sense?
Well,
Like
I think the reason that is because there's too many like people just trying to sell you. Like if you walk in
yeah,
the mall, it's like I literally walked in the mall the other day. I'm not even lying. The guy was like cologne, and I'm like, what the?
yeah,
That's all he
yeah,
said was cologne, and I'm like,
yeah. I call that getting
oh,
pitch slapped.
yeah, and I'm like,
Right. and and listen, we're all trying to do business, and I don't mind. I've really more or less gotten straight to the point with people. That's what I like to do. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be like that pushy, right? So what was an easier way? And that's where I worked with some mentors and was starting to study this, and I just saw that a lot of the people that we all know, you can think of any name, right? What they were doing was they were running their in-person workshops, but they were just doing them online, just doing them virtual. And I was like, oh, well, this is really cool, because I always thought it would be fun to run an event where people flew out and came to a hotel and had an experience for 3-4 days. But I was like, that's a lot of logistics. You got to have team for that. I kind of like to work lean. But virtual events I can do basically by myself if I want. right? If you have a Zoom account and an internet connection, right, you can run a virtual event. So it really cut through all that noise. And so what I found is, instead of having to one at a time, let me go grab Marcos or anybody who's interested and do like an hour-long discovery call, I could invite all of those people all at once. So let's just say I was doing like a discovery call a day. So instead of 30 discovery calls and at an hour a piece, I could take all 30 of those people and put them into an experience, invite them to an experience where I actually help them and let them get the feeling and experience and transformation of what I'm talking about and what I'm able to do, and then invite them to take the next steps with me. And more often than when I was doing one-on-one discovery calls, people wanted to sign up. And that's kind of where I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so much better. It's more fun and it doesn't take as much effort, right? I kind of can be, even though I'm military, I like to do things the lazy way, right? So this is the fun way to do it, was to just get everybody in a room and do more of a one-to-many sales experience, if you will.
So before COVID, you were more of like the one-on-one networking, maybe not necessarily door to door, but
I would physically go to a networking meetup of some kind, or
okay.
some kind of event, and I would just shake hands with people. And invariably, if you're good at networking, you just show interest in others, and then they'll show interest back. And I had a pretty good little, one-liner, and they would go, oh, tell me more about that, right? And then we would just move to the next steps if they were interested.
And then
so again, that took actual foot and sweat equity to do that.
Yeah. That takes your time. That takes your time. That takes like literally paying for the event, unless it's free. And then that also
free or pay doesn't matter. It's at least a 3-hour experience, right?
Then
to
you're
do
there
that
for 3 hours, and then
you got to drive. You got to go somewhere, right? You know what I mean? I had to be mobile, so I had to bring a computer with me. So I started to have to like do my work from a coffee shop, right? You know what I mean? And it just wasn't as efficient to do it that way.
And then so after COVID, you basically took the way you did an event style like networking, but you took it online.
Took it online.
So for those out there who don't know what a virtual event, can you like dumb it down?
Yeah, a virtual event is like, there's many things that would be called an event, right? Like a webinar is technically a virtual event, right? It's where you're bringing people in and you're showing them some value, and then you're making an offer to the end of them. That's a virtual event in some ways, right? The challenge is with something like a webinar where it's like 45 minutes to 90 minutes, is in order to help people see the process, you spend a lot of the time talking. And it doesn't spend enough time with them. I would consider a virtual event, it's more of an experience where it's going to be a little bit longer form, whether you do something that's like a 5-day challenge, or you do like a half day or full day masterclass, where you're really spending time to help people achieve a result and achieve a transformation while they're working with you. And it's related to what I learned from a mentor of mine, Amanda Kaufman, years ago. She called it the puppy principle. Right. And I don't know if have you ever been to like a grocery store or something, and in the parking lot, someone's got a van and they're selling puppies out of the van.
I have.
Right. And so how they sell the puppy, right? That you walk by and they go, it's like Labradors, right? Because everybody loves a lab, right? And they go, hey, do you want to hold this puppy? Right. And you, of course, why not? They're puppies. They're adorable.
Well, I think if you're with your girlfriend, like you walk by, your girlfriend's
right. They want to talk to them, or sweet talk them, and then or you got your girlfriend with you, your wife with you, or kids with you, and they're holding it, and they instantly fall in love with the puppy, because how could they not fall in love with the puppy? Right. It's everything that they wanted. They're lovable. They smell like puppies smell. They lick you in the face. They're playful. Right. And then the person selling the puppy goes, hey, do you want to buy the puppy? Like at that point, you have to physically hand the puppy back to say no. And nobody wants to do that. It's the same thing if you do a virtual event, which is, again, it's more of an immersive experience. That's why the big gurus that we might mention, they still do, like now that COVID's over, they do these big stadium in-person events, because they know it's the immersion in that experience that creates the conversion. And so if you run a virtual event where you can truly immerse the people who are actually interested in getting the results that you can provide into a room, they're going to obviously want to take the next steps with you if it's something that's right for them. And so what you'll see is your close rate, your sales rate, or your enrollment rate as long as you're doing a thing ethically and you're doing it right, will actually be higher than if you're doing one-on-one sales calls.
Interesting. Now, who is this for? Like, what kind of business does this work well for?
Honestly, it works. I would say works for any business in any niche. What I would recommend though is it's something where you are either are actively or are willing to have a high ticket premium offer.
Okay.
That's really where it's going to help. So agencies, coaches, consultants, those are kind of the niches that I tend to serve. But yeah, you could be selling products, you could be selling courses, you could be all those kinds of things. A virtual event is the number one way to monetize in the industry today, especially if you know for a fact that you can help people, right? Like if you have an offer that's already validated and you want to go put that in front of more people, there's no better way to monetize than doing an event, just bar none. Because what we see is just like, let's say you were running a book a call funnel to like a coaching program per se.
Yep.
Most people are gonna, like, for the people who actually book a call, whether they run ads or however they do it, most of the time it's around a 10% close rate. Like even if they're good right now, as for like, let's say it's like a $10,000 coaching program. On a virtual event, because you're willing to spend more time with them and you're willing to actually go through the process and help them achieve the transformation, both from a understanding the process and learning how they can do it themselves and like what resources they really are truly going to need, and then you invite them into the next steps. What we've seen, even on the first event we do with people, the enrollment rate is above 20%.
Dang, and that's interesting.
Right.
So with these virtual events, are y'all like do clients run them as webinars afterwards, or are the virtual events like you can run one? Are you like how often are you running them?
Yeah, it really depends on how you want to market to them.
Okay.
Right. So it's the name of the game then becomes like how many people are going to be there. Right. Obviously, the more people there, the better it is. Right. So I typically see people who are running a virtual event because they are longer form. They do take a little bit different energy, and you're going to be enrolling a lot more people at once, meaning you're going to have some delivery on the back end. I
Yep.
typically don't run them more than monthly.
Okay.
Right.
About once a month.
But imagine instead of taking 30 sales calls, you did one virtual event to sign your next 10 clients.
And
Right.
they're closing them on the event.
Closing them on the event, meaning no sales calls.
Interesting. Okay. No, that saves a lot. That would definitely save a lot of time because you're doing one sell. If you're doing like individual sales calls, then you're doing per time basis. So if you have like 30 calls a month or a week, then that's I would say at least 30 hours.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to do 30 hours, and then think about this: like how many people don't show up? Right.
Mm.
How many people get to the end of that call and say, let me think about it. Let me go talk to the wife. Even if you've done everything you're supposed to do as a closer, right, and answer those questions and try to handle those objections or whatever, right? They go, let me think about it. And they go a couple of days, and then they either ghost you or they get on another call and they're still not ready. Right. And you've got to chase them down. And so now, meanwhile, you're still having to run the rest of the business. And what we suggest, and listen, I'm not saying you can't still take sales calls, right? This is talking about the multiple ways that you can to make a sale. But what if you took those, let's say you had 100 people that have booked a call, right? And you got 10 of them to sign up with you. Well, you've got 90 other people who were interested. What if you could then take those 90 people and put them into a virtual event experience where you actually help them?
And so in the virtual event, like I'm gonna ask questions just like someone who's interested in like possibly running one of these. Am I giving all my am I giving very valuable information away, or like how is that going to work? Because I'm sure I got to talk for at least about an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, it's the transformation that's key, right? So
Okay.
what we do and what we when we run them, there's a lot of storytelling that happens.
Okay.
Right? That's how we learn as humans. Like we learn through stories. That's why, like when you go to church on Sunday, if you're a church going person, right, they're not going to just read the scripture to you and say, here's the point and that's it. They're going to tell you a lot of stories. They're going to make those points. That's the best, most influential people in the world. That's how they create their influence, is through storytelling. And so you have to take the people in that room on that journey that actually helps and supports them. Sure, you're going to do some training, and I recommend you give away all the secrets, because we know this, like information alone is not enough, right? Nothing that I'm talking about, nothing that you would talk about, nothing that most people you see online are talking about is not found somewhere else online, like in a book, right? Or in
stories.
in a YouTube, right? Like they're all out there, right? But most people won't take action on them, right? Most people can't take action on because they're not an expert in it, like you are, Marcos, and what you do, right? But you can absolutely help them. And I'd say, listen, go help everybody. If it helps somebody they come in for, let's say you do a free event and they take that information and they go and they crush it. Awesome. Good for them. Good for them. Most people, though, they want the extra support, right? Because they're good entrepreneurs, and good entrepreneurs understand that there is power and speed and having some people who's an expert to actually help you, right? And so that's where the fun part is that like you can run a virtual event that, let's say, only 20% of the people end up working with you. Well, the other 80% feel like they got tremendous value because they did, because you actually shared with them what you could do.
Interesting. So it's about, so like you said, you can find the information anywhere. So is it about the story, like of
Yeah, like I
the,
mean, I got books up here, right? Here's
yeah.
like the Secrets trilogy. Everybody's read. There's all kinds of stuff, right? There's the information is out there for everybody. We don't live in a world where you have to go to college to learn how to do something.
Okay. I know what I'm curious. Is it the story about yourself, or is it the story about the transformation that you're going to take the person upon?
Yeah, it's both, right?
Okay.
There's story. There's your personal story that you may tell, right? You're going to have to tell your origin story if we want to use kind of normal terms, right? For in the industry, you have to give your origin story of how you discovered your systems, right? And how they work and why they work. And you have to tell the story of how to actually implement it. What's it like? Somebody who wants to run, let's say, paid advertising, right? They need to understand, hey, what's the challenges that come with not knowing how to do that properly? Right? They're probably already experiencing it. Like 95% of the market that you're marketing to is in pain. They know them. They know we need to be able to share that with them and then show them like what's the heaven of doing it the right way, and taking them on that journey and letting them identify with the person that's actually going to be able to achieve their goals. Right. But then at the same time, we all know everybody's going to have their own story that tells them that negative thing. Like, oh, you don't understand, Marcos. Like I've got 5 kids and 3 on the way. I don't have time to do these kinds of things. And I've got all this other pressure. Right. But that's just a story they're telling themselves because there's fear associated with
Dang.
it. Right. And we need to be able to take them on that journey so that they can understand they're not alone in that. And that's something they can absolutely do. And we can show them what's real and what's not real. But you
I like,
can't do that by
yeah.
just telling them. You have to let them experience that.
I like how you said it's the story, because that literally leads into the first question I just asked you today, but I kind of switched it up. But the original question was, what's the story about a challenge in your business that you don't like to share? And that's kind of like what you're literally explaining right now.
Right.
Like everyone has like some kind of story that they're telling themselves. For, I'm not saying like the people running the virtual events, but the people that it's for, like their customers. They have the
Right.
story, and you have to basically hit that story and the pain point, and that's what you help people do. You help
Yeah.
people.
Like just imagine you're a health coach and maybe you help people with weight loss. Right. Your ideal customers, they're all experiencing pain in a way. And it's like Frank Kern. I think it's Frank Kern that I'm going to attribute this to Frank Kern, but maybe I'm wrong. If I'm not right about this, I'll apologize. But it's like if you can tell the story that your client is experiencing as good or better than they can,
That sounds like Dan
then
Henry. I don't know
it
why.
could be Dan. I don't know.
Yeah,
Right? I may be wrong. I think it's
yeah.
Frank Kern where it started.
Okay,
Maybe
I could be wrong
Dan
too, but
has said it too. Right. But if you can tell it as good as they do, then you obviously become the expert that can help solve that problem. Right. Because then you can show them what that transformation is like. And I'll give an example, right? This is your ability to communicate is your number one skill set. Like the number one value that can instantly increase your value to the marketplace is your ability to communicate, which is for me is storytelling. And how that can be done, like I can just go back biblically, right? Whether you believe that Jesus was the Son of God or not, and I'm going to use the Bible. Listen, it's regardless of what
yep.
anybody believes, it's the number one best-selling book of all time, right? Probably some decent wisdom in there, regardless of what you believe. Let's just assume, for our sake right now, and I believe this, but let's just assume everybody believed that he was the Son of God, meaning he was, could do whatever he wanted. You know how he chose to build his movement? Through storytelling.
Yeah, okay.
The,
Communication.
the, the parables. He would go places, gather people into an event where he would speak and help them experience the transformation of the good word.
Mm.
And that's how he built his movement. If he was the son of God, he could have just waved his hand, right?
That is very true. So why didn't he just wave his hand?
Right. Because we are God-fearing people, right? And this is just in my estimation, right? Like we had to come to those conclusions on our own. We had to, right? We have free will. If he could just wave his hand, then it would have been negating free will, right? So instead of just, hey, everybody, most people are like, oh, well, just perform a miracle, just do it, just prove it. That wouldn't be enough. That would be telling them and not showing them, right? You have to let them experience it, right? I don't know if you have kids, I have kids, right? I could just tell them, hey, if you go do this thing, you're going to get hurt. And they may or may not believe me. But sometimes kids just have to go do it to find out what hurts. And they don't do it again.
Or you tell them a story. The story can paint a picture in their head. Yeah, because I know, like, I'm not going to lie, like, the most, like, stories that ever, like, scared me were, like, the ghost stories. And, like,
right.
Hey, if you go, like, this old house right here, there's, like, infested with ghosts. And, like, the old king used to live there. And, like, if you do this one thing, he's going to get you. Like, that would, like, put enough fear in me to not ever go in that house.
Right. No, and it's because it took you on an emotional journey to help you feel the way that story was meant to make you feel.
And it connects.
In the hands of somebody who's not ethical, that could be dangerous.
No,
right?
Yes.
But if you actually provide and you're really wanting to help the people that you want to serve, and you can provide that transformational experience, and that's the key. It's not just an info experience, it's a transformational experience where you can help someone achieve not only a tangible result, but that emotional and identity shifting result, then you instantly become the person that is a know, like, and trust, right? That's what we all have to satisfy. So you got to go demonstrate it. And the best way to demonstrate all three of those things is to actually spend time with them. Like actually go do it. And that's why we recommend doing a virtual event, because at the end of the virtual event, they know this is for me and this is not for me. And by the way, they make all that decision all at once. Like when you do sales calls, I have to go get those 9 no's out of 10.
Yep.
Right? Or 9 ghosts out of 10. If I do it on a virtual event, it's all at once. Right? Let's just say I have a 10K offer and I've got 50 people in that room. Well, my math would tell me you're going to have at least 10 clients. That's going to be $100,000 in revenue in a single day. And nobody to my face told me no.
That'd be great. I mean, it's that simple, honestly.
Right? Isn't that much? And listen, that's like one of my favorite things, because I know that you're interested in me telling you things about me, right? One of my favorite things to do. I love to watch game shows. I love watching them, right? I love like The Price is Right and Wheel of Fortune. And listen, I like to try to do the puzzles and do the games myself. My kids have taken up on this too, right? But I love when someone hits the $1 million or whatever, and like the confetti comes down and they make all this money like all at once. It's more money than they've ever made. Like, it's just fun. It's fun to watch people win. Right. And so to me, there's no better way to experience a win like that than doing an online virtual event where you bring all your best people in there and go help them and make an invitation. We just did an event with an agency, this email marketing, brand new offer, meaning this agency didn't even exist. Brand new offer.
Brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new.
Okay.
86% of the room applied to work with him.
So I got a curious question. And I don't know if you want to share this or not, but he's brand new. Did he have an audience before? Or did he not have an audience?
He had an audience before because he'd been running a coaching program for like launch your coaching business. I think he was teaching like how to use Facebook groups to grow your business, but he did not have like a 1 million person list, right? It was a moderate list that he had built. He sent out a few emails and brought in, and he did not bring in, like, it's not like he had 300 people there. It was a modest room of around 35-ish people.
Dang, okay.
So imagine 35, what's like 86%, right? I think, remember we did the number, so I might not be right about the 35, right? But let's, 35 times 86, right? Let's say, so 30 people out of 35 applied to work with him.
But most people probably think that they need hundreds of people in their virtual events.
Not at all. Well, let's just like take it easy, right? So most people, like if you're running a business, especially if you're doing around 20 to 30K, you're probably bringing on about 5 new clients a month. ish, right? Let's just say, well, let's say it's a 5K offer, right? So five new clients would be 25K. Well, if I wanted to do all of that in one day, as opposed to over sales calls, well, the math becomes easy, right? How many people need to be in the room for 5 people to say yes to me? Well, I need like, I don't know, 20 people. If you can get 20 or 30 people in a room and you can actually help them and you have a good high ticket offer, you'll be profitable. Like you can't, like if you didn't, there would be something massively wrong, and it was probably just one small tweak that would make the difference, right? And it's just a matter of like, okay, here's how the offer needs to be presented, here's the positioning on it, and there we go. But again, if you're doing a long form event, most people aren't going to come to that unless they're interested in getting the result that you can provide.
That's true.
So you're not going to get tire kickers, because how many webinars have you attended that you had no intention of buying something? You just popped in and watched.
Every time I attended a webinar, honestly, I bought it, whatever they were
But
selling.
some people will go and opt into a free auto webinar, right? Just because I want to get the freebies or I want to check it out, right? And they never watch the whole thing or they never care. So you get all these free opt-ins that aren't really serious buyers. But in a virtual event, like I'm not signing up to come to a multi-day experience or a full day experience unless I actually care about getting what I want.
No, that's interesting. I like the virtual event style. My other question would be, how much does someone need to be making to run one of these?
You don't necessarily need to be making anything. Obviously, I'm not going to lie to you. It's always easier if you've already got a pre-existing business and offer and audience, right? Like, let's not be kidding ourselves, right? If you've got a million followers, it's going to be easier than if you have no followers. However, and this is something that I've learned, right, is that the people who are really crushing it, like, so let's just we'll use it, because I mentioned his books, right? We'll mention Russell Brunson, right? Russell Brunson just ran a big virtual event where they had thousands of people attend. Or actually, it was in person, but it doesn't matter. Russell's been building lists because he founded ClickFunnels, and he's been all about list building for decades at this point, right? His event that they just did, only 17% of the attendees came from his pre-existing list.
Dang. Okay. So let's take.
And he spent $2.5 million in advertising for that event. But the revenue produced was well over 40 million. And so the people who are winning online are the ones who are willing to spend, right? So there's a number of ways to do that. You don't have to spend money on ads. Again, if you're launch space, you can totally do this organic, because again, we don't need to do Russell Brunson numbers. We don't need to. If you wanted to do a 6-figure day if you have a 10K offer, that's 50 people in the room. How many people are on Facebook?
Millions, billions.
How many people are on YouTube?
Tons.
How many people are on LinkedIn? How many people are on TikTok?
Tons.
Right? Can you go find 50 people who are interested in what you can do?
That should be easy.
Right? It's like, it's 50.
If you can't, you're in the wrong gig. Okay, that's what I was told. If you can't find,
let's say you have a harder time. Let's say you can only get 20 people in the room. Okay, great. Are you happy with 5 new clients at 10K a piece?
So yeah, no, I get where you're going. So
right, that's just what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to be big. Like, and again, so it's great to have a pre-existing audience, but you can do this organically, right? You can send people messages. You can go do free trainings. You can go to other people's Facebook groups or YouTube channels and say, hey, I'd love to provide some free value, and invite, and then you can invite people to attend your webinar. If you've written a book, right, take your book and use that to attract people into attending your event. There's all kinds of ways to do that. Or you could run a simple ad, right? You again, especially if you're not charging anything for it, the ads are going to be relatively affordable. Your show up rate will be a little bit different, but again, we're trying to get 20 to 50 people in that first room. And then you can take the money that you earn from there, and you can take half of what you earned and reinvest it into an ad strategy. Because once you know it's converting, well, it's like printing money.
Everyone likes to print money.
Right. It's just it. Like, okay, I know that if it's going to cost me, I don't know, let's just say $50 to get somebody to attend. Right. But I know that for every 10 people that attend, 2 of them are going to sign up. Right. So what's $500 to get $20,000? Right.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's worth it. So we talked about what it would be to do this in person. If you were going to go door to door, or if you're going to call people on the phone, or if you were to have your meetings booked on the phone. You're going to be spending a couple hours. How long is this going to take? Like from start to finish, how long would this process actually take?
Yeah, I've run virtual events depending on what someone's willing to do. And so that talks about like your assets and everything. But I look at like you can do a virtual event within 10 days.
Okay.
Because most of the people are going to sign up within the last few days before the event happens. So if you have good 10 days of like trying to promote it, like you can be very successful. Most of the time when I've helped somebody else do it, we look at like a 4 to 6 week window to run the first one. Just to like, while you're building things out, especially if you're not clear on your offer yet, or you're trying to maximize that, and maybe you'll take a little bit longer. But what I've learned is at the end of the day, most of the people who register, it happens in that 10-day window leading up into the event. So you can like today decide, hey, I want to do this and make all the decisions you need to make, build a page and some email copy. It takes you, maybe if you did that on your own, it would take you a few hours, right? Or you could work with someone like me and we'd do it for you. But and then start promoting it.
How long is it actually going to take to build the presentation for the event? How long normally are the presentations? Like an hour?
For the virtual events, so let's say my favorite way to test is a 4-hour masterclass, meaning it's going to be a 4-hour experience. But you have segments of those. There's sessions.
Okay.
Right. Here's session number. Like we have a framework that's what each session is about, and plug in like what your information is. So similar to what you shared with me, like, hey, tell us how you got started in this. Like give that order. Like that's a session. But again, but you're telling that story in the way that helps the people get the transformation in the room. So there's a way to do it. But what I would recommend, if you're going to do one, don't be the only speaker. Right. When we host events with people, when we help someone do that, I will be in the room as like the co-host.
Okay.
Right. So you get to talk about your expertise, and we're going to point everybody back towards that. But then it becomes like you and I on this podcast where there's a back and forth. It's not just a one person speaking the whole time and they don't. That's what I was going to say.
Because even for me, it could be hard to just speak for, like, I'm not Andrew Tate. So I'm like, Andrew Tate could just go blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. You don't have to be Joe Rogan, right? And speak for 4 hours, right? Been
speaking for like 2 hours, and like, I'm literally interested in everything he's saying.
But to use Andrew Tate though, typically when I've seen him, right, he's got like his brother or somebody else in that room, right? Or it's like the Joe Rogan experience where he's on with somebody else, right? And there's this back and forth. And sure, Joe Rogan is giving his insights into whatever they're talking about, but it's really about whoever the guest is. Yep. It's the same way when we do it. Like, listen, you should have an MC or a co-host that can take some of that speaking burden, but also can help with energy change, right? Not everybody is a trained, certified, transformational speaker, right? And you can develop that skill. That is a skill that can be learned, but maybe you're not that. So it's good to have somebody else in the room that has a different energy, right? Some people are introverts and some people are extroverts. So having an introvert and extrovert as the co-speakers is good because you can fluctuate that energy. Yep. Right. So this up and down. And so that way the burden's not all on the one person. But honestly, a lot of people get intimidated by a multi-day experience or like a half day or full day. It really isn't as hard as you think it is, because if you can help somebody, like if you're doing a coaching program where you're going to help people for the next 12 weeks to 6 months, you don't think you have enough content to help people in half a day? You do, because it's engaging. It's not just you speaking. It's like more of like a workshop where we're actually helping people and taking questions. That time fills up pretty quickly. And most of the time when I see people go, they get to the end of their first one and they go, oh my God, like, I can't believe that we actually did all that for that amount of time. I was like, yeah. He's like, I could have kept going. I know you could have. Right. Because it's fun, because people are asking, they actually want to be there. Right, it's fun to do it.
I feel like it's their skill, and they just haven't done it. Because I can watch these streamers, like I'm pretty sure you know the streamers that they're streaming nowadays. They got Kick, Twitch, all these platforms. They could do it literally for, I'm talking about hours. I think there's one streamer did it for 24 hours, and he held an audience of like 50,000 people, and he's
100%.
It can.
There's a podcast I listen to that comes out, like they do it live. I don't listen to the live version, but I can hear their numbers because they're telling me, and they're not talking about like business necessarily. They're just having fun, but there's like 3 or 4 people on it, and they go for like 3-4 hours every Friday, and they have like 18,000 people watching. Right. And it's just because it's an engaging and fun experience. They talk to the chat, they have people comment on stuff, and they get into it. Right. And so whatever the subject is, the same thing here. Imagine you have, instead of those one-on-one sales calls where the other person feels all the pressure to reveal themselves and they have to like ask very specific questions and you've got to challenge them. Imagine they're all in the chat and they're in the room and it's all face to camera. And so one person raises their hand, I have this question. Well, the other 18 people in the room have that question too, but many of them would have been scared to ask that. So they all get the experience of how that question is resolved. And a lot of times the momentum of that will help them. So again, even if you made no sales, which has never happened to me, right? But even if you did, everybody there is going to feel like they got a ton of value and they're going to come back to your next thing that you do.
Or yeah, like, cause like not everyone's ready to buy right away. And that's what some people don't understand is like, they want like people to buy like today, but they might have stuff going on. So, but like you said, you will still make an impression on them because you gave them free value. Then maybe they use that value through that month, came back on because it worked. And then next thing you know, they're buying from you.
And listen, the big gurus that would do this too, they're going to have like 20, 30,000 people. They're never going to see your question. But people who aren't like the big household names, like you can get in a room with 20 people and literally engage with them. Like that has unspeakable amounts of value to people. And that's what, truthfully, the premium buyers that we all want to work with, they all value experiences more than they value things.
Okay. So we're going to stay on the same topic, but you like to talk mindset. What mindset does it take to run this? Because I'm sure you get people who are like, okay, well, I don't have the time. I'm not a good speaker. Maybe I don't have the money right now. Like I have the money, but I don't know if this is going to be a good investment. Like what kind of mindset does it really take to make one of these work?
I'm glad you asked that question. The way that this all works, and like I told you, I like to keep things simple. Like I don't love the idea of doing, listen, sales calls are great. And I think it's a fantastic skill to focus on is learning how to be a better salesman for your business. That said, this kind of reminds me of, there's the book, and I think he's writing a new one. There's a book by Benjamin Hardy called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
I don't think I've heard of it, but
well, if you haven't read it, go check it out. All right, it's awesome. It's awesome as audio, or get the book. But there's an idea that he frames in there is that it's actually easier to 10x your business than it is to 2x it, or any goal, right? Realistically. So let's just say, for instance, I have a coaching business that makes $10,000 a month, right? If I wanted to double that to $20,000, my natural tendency might be to just do a little bit or a lot more of what I'm already doing, right? And that's just where your focus is. And so it just becomes an effort play. Like, let me just put in more effort. However, if I wanted to 10x, like I would never be able to out effort what I was already doing to 10x. I would have to do something radically different than what I was doing at the original goal. Like, so meaning like some of the stuff that I'm focusing on at the 1x is no longer relevant.
interesting.
So that's where this is. And so the mindset is not, hey, I'm a great speaker. Like, again, you don't have to be the only speaker in the room. In fact, I would encourage you not to be. The encouragement is, can you actually help the people? And if you can, I've already told you that you're going to end up enrolling and working with more people at an event than you would one-on-one on a phone, in my estimation, just because that's just what the numbers lay out. And if you actually do want to serve the people that you can help, aren't you like morally obligated to go do that thing? Like, you're just going to let that not happen because you're scared to. I'm not asking you to get on a big stage in front of everybody. You're going to be like, I'm in my home office. This is where I do most of my virtual events, right here with my plush thing on the wall.
I think the fear comes from failure. What if I do this and no one shows up, or no one buys, or they all start dropping off?
Right. Well, listen, that's not a you necessarily issue. They need to be connected to the experience, but that's why you partner with somebody who does do that. But you already know, especially if you've already sold your process, you know people want it, right? And there's a framework. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to do a unicorn event. Follow a process that actually works. And it's been laid out to everybody. Like, did you learn how to do webinars? Like, if you do webinars, like, did you just magically make a webinar, or did you follow another template? You probably followed another template, right? You probably did that. And maybe you did a webinar and it didn't work. It was maybe because you strayed from the framework of what works, because you tried to do something a little bit different. And that's okay. It's a test, but you're always learning. You're always going to make something else. But listen, what I can show you this, if you had a lower amount of success than you wanted, it's typically a small tweak, and it's nothing to take personal, because how we feel about it's not going to change what the process is to have success. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Right. So we can have that. And listen, I've been in rooms where I put a lot of effort into it, and I had 12 people sign up when I first started to do this. Right. And I was expecting to do a big thing, and 12 people signed up. That's it. 12 people, and only like 3 people showed the first time I tried it. But did you know that like 2 out of the 3 bought my program? I did it anyway, but 2 out of 3 bought, because I was able to serve them. Right? And let's just say they didn't, but that's okay. They would all say, this was fun. They'll give you direct feedback immediately of what they liked and didn't like, and you can go fix it.
So the moral is just don't get discouraged, and you're not going to be perfect the first time.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, all the people that you're following today, they all sucked at first, right? More than like, and they probably would all tell you that, right? Everybody has a learning curve. And so don't like, the worst thing to do, like, there's 2 silent killers, and you'll know them when I say them, right? The first one is perfectionism, right? Is trying to make everything perfect before you do it. It's much better just to do things, and then let them shape themselves, and you'll figure it out. But perfectionism kills people, because then it puts you in that state of, was it analysis paralysis? Because you're trying to make it just the best thing ever. Don't do that. And then the other thing is comparison. Trying to compare what you did to what somebody else did.
Like Russell Brunson, you're like, oh, Russell Brunson has like,
oh yeah,
hundreds of thousands
Russell
of people
can do this, or Tony Robbins can do that, or Grant Cardone could do this, or, let me use, lady like, Mel Robbins could do this, right? Or, whoever, like, they all doing these things. I'm never going to do that, so like, I'm not going to go for it, right? Or, hey, I know this person, and they did, $85,000 in their first month in business, right? And I only did 5, so I'm just going to quit. Right. Well, do you actually care about what you can, like, are you in business because you actually want to help people, or are you in it just as all you care about is the money?
Okay.
Right. Like, do you actually care about them? Well, listen, okay. Is it all right for you to, like, struggle a little bit? Okay. But listen, there's no struggling. You're learning. You're going to learn what works and what doesn't, right? This is the Thomas Edison quote, right? I learned 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb before he made the light bulb.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and I like the 2 comparisons you gave, because the first one was really me, because I was always trying to be perfect. Like, even with the podcast, I was like, okay, well, I need the perfect mic. I need this. Like, the mic's not the best, but it did like stop me for the longest time of like pushing forward. So I had to come up with my own new belief, which is like, perfection's for amateurs. Like, only amateurs are gonna try to be perfect, and the greatest people that we see nowadays, they built their business on imperfection, and they move forward.
Are you a firstborn in your family?
Thirdborn.
Well, I'm a firstborn. I noticed this a lot more in firstborns, right? But I think that a lot of firstborns struggle with perfectionism because they didn't have somebody in front of them to show them what to do, right? So I was like that. I was always like, hey, I'll be the person that will dip my toe in the water and test it before I would just put myself out there. But like, my younger siblings would just go jump in the pool, right? And you know what I mean? That's just because they see me get in, and it's okay. Like, and they just got used to that mindset because they had an example ahead of them. And I think that I learn it. We all learn this. I think I have to relearn this lesson at least once a year. But it's the fastest path to getting what you want is just to take action. I think there's a story about W. Clement Stone. He was a contemporary of Think and Grow Rich, the author of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, right? And this guy was like a multimillionaire, like a long time ago, back when like listen, $1 million is a lot of money now. Like, I think we would all be happy if we could add $1 million to our bank account. I don't care how much money you make, right? But $1 million back then, like, you were a rich dude, right? To say the least. And so they interviewed him, and they would ask him about, like, what makes you successful? Like, how are you able to be a millionaire, right? And he was so successful that I think he had millionaires working for him.
Damn.
Right? Like, how could you do this, right? Like, what is it? And he had this mantra about him that said that, and he said, like, I would say this mantra to myself 100 times a day. Like, and he would live in like a high rise place, and like get on an elevator, and like, before he hit the bottom floor, say it 100 times, right? And then he started having everybody who worked for him say it, 100 times. And the mantra is this. I hope I'm open looping and creating desire to hear about it. But it would say, do it now. Do it now. Do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. He would just say that over and over again because he understood, and this is what most successful, most wealthy people understand, is that time is infinitely more valuable than money. And the longer you wait to get into action, the more that's actually costing you. And so just get in there, right? Like it's gonna, maybe it'll hurt a little bit. Maybe you won't hit a home run every single time. I'm going to pair this with I can pair it with a different one. One of the ones that always gets me excited is a little bit different, but like, it's just do it now. Like you probably heard this term, like money loves speed.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Like do it now. Like if you think that the next step for you is launching a podcast, do it. Right. If you think that, you're tired of taking sales calls, well, don't just do more sales calls. Do something different. I would recommend doing virtual events, right? If you want to work with 10 new clients, there's different ways to do that, but what's the way that would maximize that for you? Do it now.
Right? And I was literally gonna ask you the quote of the day today. I was gonna say, what would be your quote of today? But I feel like that would be the quote of the day. Do it now.
Do it now. Do it now. One of my other favorites, I'll pair this, and then I don't know if you got some other questions we can go for. I don't know if we're going too long, but because I want to respect your audience too. But this has just been super fun. But one of my favorite ones.
I'm gonna say we have about honestly 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I will give this short story and a quote, and then we can close out however you want to. But there's a famous golfer, Hall of Fame level golfer. His name was Walter Hagen, and he was he was a little bit different, unconventional type golfer compared to others. I think he was comparably in his era was Bobby Jones, who was a more like fundamental type player. Like it's very systematic. Like, and that's how I think they teach most people play golf. It's like, hey, this is the swing. There's all these mechanics, and you do this, and you'll be successful. I think it's how most people think they have to be. And I was in the military. Structure is certainly very important, but sometimes like it doesn't always just go smoothly. And so Walter Hagen's philosophy was that 3 lousy shots and 1 brilliant shot still makes par. And so listen, if you struggled some or you tried a different business here and nothing and didn't work right, it's okay. You still have a brilliant shot in you and you can still make par. I don't care if you're 55 years old and never done anything. Right? I don't care if you've failed in 3 or 4 different businesses. Doesn't matter. Right? Do it now. Right? You still have that brilliant shot, and you can't make a shot that you don't take. So go take it. That's the way. That's that. I'll leave you with that, and then whatever else. To close out. Right?
I've loved this podcast. Where can people find you, and where can people contact you if they want to work with you and run a virtual event to get more customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on socials. I'm more active on Facebook, but I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. My handle is Justin Boyum, and I'm sure you'll share this out, Marcus, wherever it is. Or you can go to my website if you want to learn more about virtual events and how we can increase the speed to income for you using virtual events. And it's at www.thechargeforward.com. We have a little bit of info and some videos you can check out there. And if it's something that you think you'd like to implement in your business, whether you're looking to launch or scale, just schedule a call with our team and we'll see if it's a good fit for you.
Do it now.
Do it now.
Love it. I'm gonna put that link in the description below. So anyone wants to find that link to your website, I'll put it right below in the description on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcos, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, sir. No, it's been a pleasure. Hope to stay in contact with you and be in touch.
All right. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.